Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or TigerTank12, however you wanna call me, I don't really care. And today, we are in the realm of the test server once again. And you're probably asking yourself like, wait, TigerTank, wasn't there like a sandbox server just a month ago, or like 3 weeks? You made a video about the new HD maps, yeah, well, the year is going to wrap up very, very quickly. If you have looked at the date, it's already end or middle of November. All that is remaining is December, and then we are already through the year 2017. And it's incredible how fast time has passed. The same goes for World of Tanks. This has been one heck of a year for this game. They had so many updates, so many new things that they added, tanks that they have reworked. The complete British tech tree has been completely revamped. Heavy tanks, tier 10 tank destroyers now. And it's very exciting. It's an exciting time for a World of Tanks player to see all the change. But obviously, with the change comes either like a stern opposition against change or the adaptation, if you're gonna adapt to the current system. So, it has been a great year if we look back. Now we're looking at the very next patch that's going to be hitting the World of Tanks live server in December sometime. We're not entirely sure. It's the first day of the test server. I just jumped on and I wanted to show you guys today. Actually, this video is a preview of the Badger, the brand new British tier 10 tank destroyer. And if you look at it, it looks like a little beefed up tortoise. We can actually get the tortoise really fast since we are on the test server. We can just buy tanks just to compare the different size of the tank and just to look at it. Like if you look at the tortoise, you have very good sturdy frontal armor, but very prominent weak spots with this machine gun port and the turret over here, the hatch. And actually this entire front plate of the armor is also actually quite weak if you're going up against tier 9 and tier 10 opponents, since they can actually penetrate you with over 250 millimeters of penetration. But we're not talking about the tortoise, since this tank is the tier 9 British tank destroyer and not the tier 10. Today we're going to take a look at the Badger. This is the Fv217 Badger, and the very first thing you can see is that it's the replacement of the Fv215B 183. And if you want to get that tank, you still have some time up until December. I'm grinding my ass off to get that tank. But if you can't get it, there's still another Death Star in the game, and that is the tank destroyer, the Fv4005. But unfortunately, the big gun variant, the Death Star, the original Death Star, will only be available to those people who have already owned it. So the very first thing you probably will ask yourself in regard of, well, it's missing its turret, obviously. Wargaming are trying to make this tank more in, as a successor to the previous vehicles, so that they're kind of the same, not to have such a extreme different kind of gameplay mechanic. Well, with like the Fv215B, like down here, and the Super Conqueror, these tanks are very different from one another, and so was the Tortoise and the Fv215B 183. Because obviously one of them suddenly has a turret and a huge gun, and the other one had like the best TPM in the game. So that is a big step, but in my opinion, I really enjoyed that kind of different like gameplay. It was refreshing for me. So, well, I don't really see this as a very beneficial change, at least. It gives us new vehicles, obviously, and for all the other people, like, it's a free tier 10 premium tank, and that is very nice. But still, I think the variation goes a little bit down. But that's enough of that. Let's jump right into this tank. So the very first thing you'll notice about this tank, it looks really tank destroyerish. So what is a tank destroyer? What does it look like? It looks like kind of this. So it doesn't have a turret. it's a fixed position of the gun. You can actually you can move it around. It's not like the Swedish tank destroyers, and it does have a lot of frontal armor. But we'll get to that eventually. Right now, what you can see is that there are like 2 layers up on this tank. The very first layer is the lower hull where the gun is actually placed in, and the second layer is this part right on the top, which has kind of been added on top of the gun layer part, so it makes the tank a little bit bigger. It looks kind of awkward. It looks like one of those tank designs where people just had too much time to make some weird structures, angles, and just put another one on top of it. Maybe they wanted to add another gun or whatever. That's just my crazy mind talking. And then all the other characteristics scream tank destroyer. So what is this tank capable of? If we take a look at the statistics, the stats on the right hand side, you can see absolutely amazing is firepower. You're running a 123mm gun. Gone are the days where you are running around with the 183mm cannon, that brutal Death Star gun that gave all the power to the British tier 10 tank destroyer, and was the reason for a lot of one-shots even at tier 10. So what do you get with this gun? You get a rate of fire of 7.41 rounds per minute, and that is amazing. This is a tier 10 gun. If we compare it to the Super Conqueror, look at the rate of fire on this tank. It's 6.9 rounds per minute, and this is a heavy tank. And this 6.9 rounds per minute was actually buffed from the Fv217B. This tank has it's the same now, but it was actually buffed from the previous Fv217B. It's just absolutely crazy that you're running around with a tank that has a rate of fire of 7.41 with a 123mm caliber gun. The pen, 272mm with standard AP rounds, very, very good penetration. You should not have any troubles penetrating weak spots of tier 10 tanks. 320mm of pen with APCR. Obviously APCR, they travel faster, but the pen is not that crazy. It's not such a crazy increase like with heat rounds, but it's nice to have better velocity. And then the very, very good hash round that the Brits use. 130mm of penetration with a hash round is fairly decent. So average damage is 480. It's higher than on the Tortoise with its 120mm gun. And 480, you'll be rolling around the 500 area most of the time. And dispersion at 0.3 at 100 meters is not the best. There are better tanks, but I do not have... there are better vehicles with better aim time, but I do not have the best crew on it yet. So since I'm not really playing a lot of British tank destroyers, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of excited, because I am excited for the changes that are coming for World of Tanks, and I'm always excited when I'm on a test server. So sorry if I'm a little bit all over the place right now. So aim time, 1.7 seconds aim time. It's pretty damn ridiculous. That aim time is incredible. 1.7 seconds, you'll be aiming in so fast. This gun, the gun already screams, I'm super good at sniping and at putting those very nice, accurate shots into those weak spots. Then let's go to survivability. So this is where this tank kind of takes the turn to an ultimate freaking steel wall. If you believe that the T110E3 has the best armor, at least frontal armor in the game, I think you have to think again. I think this tank now has become the thickest armored tank in the game, at least from the front, with 355mm of armor. There are certainly no weak spots on the upper fucking part of the hull. One of the weak spots that you'll probably be thinking about and have already noticed during my 10-minute rambling now is the lower plate right here. And this lower plate is a weak spot. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get any statistics on World of Tanks viewer or tank viewer. So they don't have the model yet because the test server just was released. But the lower plate is the most important weak spot on the front of this tank. But if you can hide the lower plate, go hull down, this is almost the worst tank to be facing frontally. 355 millimeters of armor, and then at this angle, this tank can bounce premium shells of other tier 10 tank destroyers. Just think about that. That is absolutely crazy. I think the 400 millimeter of penetration that you have on the Yak Panzer E100's heat round will probably not stop it, but still, I mean, it's just absolutely mad to think about the armor that this thing has. Then you have 101 millimeter armor on the side. Well, it's not that great, but considering you have so much armor on the front. Then you have 38 millimeters armor on the back. Like, high explosive ammunition can penetrate you. Never let anyone get behind you. And that is probably one of the main deaths that a lot of people will experience when they get this tank. They get outflanked and they get destroyed by the side or by the rear. 2,100 hit points. If you look at the Tortoise, it only has 100 more, but armor-wise, this tank is a lot better armored than the Tortoise. 273 millimeters. Now you have to keep in mind that 355 millimeters of armor is the toughest or the strongest part or the strongest part in the front that is armored. It's not everywhere the same armor value, but it's very, very tough to go through. Mobility wise, now you'll probably ask yourself, well, with so much armor, it must be very slow, right? Must be kind of heavy and sluggish, like a typical British tank destroyer, not very fast. Well, I can pleasantly surprise some of you, maybe a little bit. So it has a 950 horsepower engine, and it does go up to 30 kilometers per hour frontally, like driving forwards, and backwards 12 kilometers per hour. So never back up with this thing, it's way too slow. And another problem is that the track traverse with 23.47 degrees per second is trash. If you get flanked in this tank, if you're too close, you're going to be having a bad time. If we take a look at the Tortoise and we get the top tracks on this vehicle and the top engine, just to show you guys what I mean right here, it's very, very similar in the stats. It's a little bit worse even than the Badger, but the thing is with the Tortoise is that you have a very, very big gun arc in the front, so you can turn your gun around almost, I think, 100 degrees or even more. But with this tank, you're a little bit limited with the gun arc, and especially if you have to turn your tank a little bit, it gives the enemy tanks the ability to shoot your side armor, your very weak side armor, and once you're turning around, it's almost game over for this tank. So you have to maybe even snipe, stay in one position, get a very good position. If you can get a very good position in the game, this tank cannot be challenged with normal guns. Maybe artillery, but normal guns, not that much. Concealment-wise, this tank, well, it doesn't scream. It is doesn't scream best camouflage vehicle. Spotting wise, well, 398 meters of view range. I think that is standard. Tank destroyers don't have the best kind of view range. Obviously, my crew is not the best. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the statistics of this tank. To recap it, great gun, amazing armor, decent mobility, but lacking side and rear protection, and lacking good enough traverse speed to actually be able to hold off several tanks trying to flank you, or just one tank trying to flank you. So yeah, big trouble for a tank destroyer if you don't have a turret, and is probably one of the most caused deaths, you know, getting shot in the side or in the rear, getting flanked. I hope you guys enjoyed the just this little preview, we're going to jump right into the game, and let's do that right now. So, unfortunately, I cannot show you guys replays because my replay file has kind of been corrupted, and I can't replay any other replays. So we're kind of stuck with some live action gameplay commentary, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I've done them before there were even those replays, those shiny, beautiful replays that Wolf Tanks has introduced to us in 8 point something, very, very long time ago. And now, as you can see, we are playing in a tier 10 match. No other tier than tier 10, and it looks like there's no one going down the A line. No one is going to the other side of the map. We're playing on Erlenberg, and we are in the most heavily armored tank, at least frontally, in the game. So what are we supposed to do? We do not have the best view range, 398 meters, but we do have one of the best guns in the game, with a rate of fire of a rate of fire of 7.4, if I remember correctly, which results in 6.83 second reload time. That's, I think, over 4,000 DPM, and that is astonishing because this gun has a pen of 272. So yeah, you're not going to be bouncing off a lot of stuff with this gun, except for other Badger tanks. Yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous with the gun. So very first thing I want to mention is keep in mind that changes will probably come to this tank, because it is pretty obvious that it's a test server where we get to test these vehicles, see if they are too strong, and if that is the case, if they're too imbalanced, if they're too good, too bad, Wargaming will have to act somehow. That is the beauty of a test server. And I do think that they will have to reduce the armor on the front a little bit, or give it some additional weak spots. Because right now, the only thing that is penetrating me frontally with this tank is an... oh, there we go. Target. The only thing that's penetrating me frontally is either premium rounds from Jagdpanzer E100, or all the other heat shit that is coming in. But that M48 actually managed to penetrate or hit our lower plate, which is the one big weak spot that you have on this tank. Other than that, it's pretty damn difficult to kill one of these things if you do not have the side or the rear, because it's just so well armored. It's almost ridiculous. But yeah, without further ado, I do not want to bitch all day about this tank. I am just not a big fan of these slow tank destroyers. I've played too many light tanks. I need my speed. I have the need for speed and all that kind of stuff. And I do not enjoy, sitting in one spot for too long. That is why I don't really upload a lot of tank destroyer gameplay. That's why you don't really see that a lot on my channel. Although, I mean, obviously tank destroyers are a great source of entertainment. There is nothing in the game that hits as hard as a tank destroyer, and that is good the way it is. But just I like my faster tanks where I can actually do much more damage. But with the DPM, it's much closer to a light tank or a medium tank than one of those big tank destroyers like the Death Star, the 183, which obviously is ridiculous from the alpha damage. Oh, actually we managed to get a hit into the AMX M454. That is the brand new French tier 10 tanks, heavy tank. That's their very first, at least their very first tier 10 heavy tank that actually has armor, and will probably be their only tier 10 heavy tank with armor. So what you're gonna see right now is some very aggressive kind of style with the Badger. You usually don't do that in such a tank destroyer, because you just don't have the mobility or, you know, the flexibility to get around these medium tanks. If they close the distance, you're gonna have a bad time, but luckily for us, this guy decides to run away. It's his doom. We managed to get 2 nice shots into him, and he gets wrecked by that rate of fire of ours. 6.83 seconds. If you really have like a flank that you can hold down with this tank, you know, if you have the lower plate hidden from any tank, like at tier 9, tier 10, since you will be facing some tier 8 tanks in this vehicle. What are tier 8 tanks going to be able to do against this tank? Like, what the hell are they supposed to do? Okay, unfortunately, bounce right there. But one of the tanks that can actually deal damage to you, quite substantial amount of damage, is the Fv217 and the 183. Since both of these tanks have a very, very, very competitive 183mm gun equipped, and if they're running with hash, they will probably do 700 damage or upwards to, I don't know, 600-700 damage to your tank without penetrating you. And I think that's one of the few good ways of taking out this tank, or actually like some of the only ways to take out this tank is, you know, spamming those high explosive rounds at it, because you obviously don't have a weak spot except for the lower plate. It's very similar to the T110E3, except for that thing you can spam the heat shells. I think with this one it's a little bit easier with the heat rounds, at least on the Jagdpanzer E100 and even some tier 10 medium tanks. You can actually, since they are angled like they're quite flat, you can actually penetrate them. But you'll see, this object will not penetrate if he doesn't shoot the right place. The right place of this tank to shoot is the lower plate right there, and you can see the rate of fire is just, it's mad. It's so good. Like, in a one-on-one engagement, this tank against anything that, you know, doesn't have the same amount of DPM, this tank will come out as victorious. And the gun arc actually is not that bad. You can see that it allows you quite a lot of flexibility. The traverse speed is not as good. Obviously, it's a tank destroyer. It does need to have some drawbacks, since it's very, very, very powerful in a lot of other regards. And you can see that with just a few shots, we managed to do 5,257 damage, rack up 1,000 experience, and get additional 2,500 spotting damage. And all we did was actually sit in our base, wait. Our armor wasn't even tested. I think we only bounced maybe one shot, like in the end. One shot went right through us, but other than that, we only blocked 480 damage. So yeah, I'll probably cover this tank a little bit more in detail. Like, I play it more and show you guys some more gameplay if I have time. Right now, all I want to do is get this preview out to show you guys that this tank, what this tank is all about, how you can engage it, and what kind of tier 10 you can expect in the next month. So to give my verdict on this preview, as always, disclaimer, big disclaimer, subject to change. Everything will change, possibly change. This tank here has an amazing gun, it has amazing armor, and those strengths really outdo the weaknesses or the drawbacks, because the only real drawback I see on this tank is that the track traverse is not as great, and maybe it's not doesn't have the best gun arc, especially if you consider it and remember the gun arc of the Tortoise. But other than that, this is a fairly competitive tank destroyer, like the very classic tank destroyer design, no turret, and it's perfected in that kind of sense. People who love the E3, people who love the Jagdpanzer E100 will love this tank. But people who have preferred the 215-183, which was kind of a very unique vehicle with its gun and the turret on top, they will maybe not have as much fun as they have with the 183, but it still is fairly or very much a competitive vehicle at tier 10. Maybe a little bit too competitive at this state right now, since penetrating the front part of the tank without premium ammunition is almost impossible. We'll see what Wargaming will do, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys on the next one.